Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to Sports Spectrum. I'm Jason Romano. It is great to have you joining us here today on the podcast. Really excited about our conversation with Kristen Bell, college basketball referee, Division I college basketball referee. And before we get to our conversation with Kristen, I want to tell you about our Sports Spectrum magazine. We are approaching Thanksgiving and we are very close to Christmas, and it's that time when we're all trying to think about a gift to give to someone, and I can't recommend more the Sports Spectrum magazine for a couple reasons. First of all, it's cheap. It's only $18 for an entire year subscription to the Sports Spectrum magazine, our quarterly magazine. 4 times a year, you get a brand new issue, plus a couple bonus issues throughout the year on Sports Spectrum and the Sports Spectrum magazine. Again, $18. So that's the first reason. The second is you get to support our ministry by giving a magazine to someone, whether it's yourself or someone close to you, a family member, someone from your church, sports team, whatever it is. You can give them this magazine and have them read stories of how Jesus is impacting the lives of those in the sports world. So you're giving people an opportunity to read about the gospel through the lens of sports in this magazine. Pretty cool. So it's $18 for an entire year. You can subscribe today by going to sportsspectrum.com. Go to sportsspectrum.com. You'll see a banner right at the top. You can click that button. You subscribe. It's $18 and you are in. Makes a great gift for the holiday season and supports our ministry in a great way that we can partner together. So check it out, sportsspectrum.com, and consider subscribing to our Sports Spectrum magazine. Really excited today to welcome Kristen Bell, college basketball referee, to the Sports Spectrum podcast. The first college basketball referee we've had on, and Kristen has been doing this now for 10 years as a Division I NCAA women's basketball referee, and she's got a really fun story and a great personality. And I was just really curious early on, asking her a ton of questions about how one becomes a college basketball referee. And man, she's got some amazing stories. Refereeing when she was 6 months pregnant, what that looks like being married to a husband who works in Hollywood as a stuntman and an actor, and how they met, which is a fantastic story and truly shows God's timing being perfect in how they were introduced, and kind of her rituals and some of the things that she does from a spiritual perspective before every game. And she details that here on the podcast as well. You'll love Kristen Bell. She's an awesome person with a great personality. College basketball referee. Take a listen to Kristen Bell's story here on Sports Spectrum. Kristen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Glad to have you. Love that our connection came from a mutual friend, Sarah Roberts from FCA. Sarah was on the podcast about a month or two ago, and definitely go back and listen to her story after you're done listening to this conversation with Kristen. And I love how, and I said this to you before, how it's just sort of God's people bring us all together and what we meet in all these different relationships. And you have such a unique story and such a unique sort of role that God has placed you in as a college basketball referee. You're going into your 9th season now as a Division I NCAA women's basketball referee. So just talk to us about how excited you are about this season and kind of the role of being a referee.
Oh man, it's been a long road. You know, I've been doing it since when I was in high school. My mom told me I had to get a job, so I did like the 4-year-olds basketball up and down when the rims were 6 feet high, and then they're like, hey, you do a pretty good job at this. And so I started doing AAU, and then I wanted to do the men's league, but they're like, oh, you can't referee men's league until you're 18. So once I got turned 18, I did the men's league. And when I look back, I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no business being there, but they let me do it. And then, once I got into college, instead of my friends that were doing, work study in a library, trying to make $8 to $10 an hour, I would go out and do a JV and a varsity game and after my homework and my labs at school, I'd head out and do these basketball games, and I would come home with $150 back then and think that I was balling. So I'm like, oh man, there's a career in this. So it kind of stemmed from just being around sports my whole life. But this will be now my 10th season at Division I and my first year living out on the East Coast in Atlanta. And last summer, I got picked up in the SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12, and 2 other smaller Division I conferences. And it was very surreal. I have planned my babies down to the week around basketball season. I never missed a game. I refereed 6 months pregnant with both of them. I was like, told my husband, I have to get pregnant in these 2 weeks, and if not, then we're waiting until next basketball season, because it's such a huge priority for me. And, it's that balance, right? Because family is a huge priority as well. And God was all over it. And I couldn't be more blessed, because with the timing of being pregnant when I was able to referee all through basketball season. And then I would take the summers off. Now with the summers, usually that's when you try out for other conferences. So, this was my first summer where I was able to try out after having my daughter, my second child. And the amount of preparation that I put in to make sure that it was very important to me to come back from my children. And this was something that I put on my own heart, but I want to come back, and I don't want to allow anybody to give me a reason of why I'm not as good because I had children, because maybe the timing doesn't line up and I'm not able to study as much or do as many games. I was like, I'm not going to allow that to be an excuse. I'm going to come back better. I'm going to be in better shape. I'm going to be better disciplined. I'm going to pay attention to all the fine little details that I need to do to put myself in a position so that I can at least control what I can control. And then if I get hired or not, at least I can sleep at night. But knowing that I put in the work, and God's favor allowed me to have this opportunity. So when I was on the West Coast living in Los Angeles, I was able to referee in the major conferences on the West. So now it's a transition, and it's a transition. I don't know anybody that I'm really refereeing with. I've never been to any of the college campuses. The coaches don't know who I am. Coaches get very paranoid. Yeah. They'll want to know where I'm from and what I worked and all of that. So it's going to be a new experience, and I am going to embrace the challenge and the struggle. And I'm so excited for the season to start.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. And I think the first thing that stood out was that you refereed 6 months pregnant. I mean,
I did.
Like, how do you do that?
Oh my gosh. There would be times toward the very end. And by this time it was end of March, right? So we know basketball season's winding down, and I was my very last game that I refereed. There would be one fast break, and then if there was 2 or 3 fast breaks in a row, it would be such a struggle to get down the floor because I would get side aches or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm done. This is it. Putting the pants in the drawer, and we're not going to open these up till basketball season. But I was very disciplined with my diet and training, and I worked out. I was doing handstand push-ups and climbing ropes when I was 8 months pregnant with my kids. So I tried to lead by example so that my kids look back at this and be like, wow, my mom was pretty cool.
Yeah, rock star mom right there. Now, interestingly enough, you said, another thing you said in your answer for the first question was that you get picked up by the conferences. So how does that work? How are you picked up? How do they even find you? How are you, do you have tapes that are out there and they kind of submit them and people kind of pick and choose? How does the whole process work?
That's a great question. And how it works is referees run a camp that runs concurrently with random basketball camps throughout the summer. And so a lot of times they're more elite high school boys tournaments where there's a lot of people there. They're trying to feed in all the different pieces of the environment to really get an idea of how you handle certain various types of pressure from coaches, players, parents, etc. So when you randomly see when you go to some of these AAU or elite basketball tournaments, there's referees running these camps too. And we have coordinators and assigners standing on the sideline watching your every move. They watch how your signals are, how you interact with coaches, if you're a leader on the floor. Every little movement is analyzed. And I think a lot of people that watch referees don't realize the magnitude of what our job entails and how much time we put in outside of the actual game.
So in essence, it's not it is a full-time job, but it's not in the sense that it's guaranteed, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, or is it? Are you guaranteed a certain amount of games during the season, or are you, and how much, I got so many questions, and how much time do you have to know where you're going to be coaching or where you're going to be refereeing before the game actually happens?
Yeah.
What's that look like?
Yeah. So it's a lot. It's when you're reffing just Division I, there are a ton of college referees that do that for their full-time job. So they referee for 5 months out of the year, and they have the other 7 months off technically off, or they're not refereeing. But we still have camps that we have to attend the summer. We're still studying. We're breaking down tape. Yeah. So it's still a huge time commitment. But you know what it kind of looks like is, for example, just to show you that my schedule. Do you want like an example of just this weekend?
Yeah, sure.
So Friday, I have a game at University of Maryland. So I'll fly up there. We have to be at the gym. We meet up with our crew, and then we're at the gym an hour and a half to 2 hours before, where we do a pregame, we stretch, all of that. And then after my game, I fly out that night and I land back in Atlanta at about 1 a.m. But I have a game, because it's preseason, it's an exhibition game in Auburn the next morning at 10. So when I landed in Atlanta late Friday night, I drive to Auburn. I stay in a hotel that night. I wake up in the morning. I do the scrimmage. I fly straight out after the scrimmage. I go to Texas A&M. I have an exhibition game there, and then I fly home. So we're in charge of our travel. We're in charge of booking everything. You cannot miss a game because you were not responsible with all of your travel and your hotels and flights. It's not acceptable. But the amount of time and prep that it takes to plan all of that out is it's a lot. It's a lot that people don't realize. I've definitely become a travel expert. So
you know your schedule beforehand, right? Like, so that schedule that you just laid out, how long in advance have you known about that? Booked the flights, hotel, all that?
Yeah. So at the NCAA level, we get our schedule. I just got all of my games last week, and I know all of my schedule until tournament time. And then they determine who's going to go further in postseason conference tournament. So I know my schedule from now all the way until March. Okay. For the NBA, they get their schedules once a month. And so they plan their travel, and usually they work more with a travel agent. Whereas with NCAA college referees, we do most of our own travel.
Do you have a goal, a desire to be an NBA ref someday? Is that something that you've thought about? Yeah,
I've been approached several times. I've been asked a ton. And I will say this, if I didn't have children or I wasn't married, I would go that route in a heartbeat. But because the NBA season is closer to 9 months, sometimes even 10 months, then I'd be traveling all the time, and that's not worth the balance for me to sacrifice with my family. So I know with my family and my circumstances, we can pull it together for 5 months and we can make it work. But longer than that would be really tough on my family.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. Kristen Bell is our guest here on Sports Spectrum's podcast about balancing the idea of being a mom, being a wife, with being in a role that takes you to a lot of different places and you're traveling. It's not like you wake up, you go to work, you come home, and there it is. Right. Often it's sounds pretty chaotic. So talk about that balance, and what does that look like for you, being able to balance all of that, and even what that looks like being present as a wife and as a mom in season, and the difficulty of doing that. Yeah, that's been the toughest because my kids are 4 and 1. And so it's a different level of balance for both of them to show that they don't understand that I have to leave all the time and why I'm not home. Right. So I have to attribute it to, for one, my husband is phenomenal at making sure that he holds it down when I'm gone. And my husband travels a ton as well because he's in the entertainment industry. He's an actor and a stuntman. And so when he's filming on set and I'm out of town, we have to create that balance for our kids so they know that there's stability and there's love, and we don't have any family where we live either. So you can see how tricky that would be. Yeah. But we do have some close friends and family to be able to help out with that. And it's a matter of really showing up and being present when I am with my children. And I know with how technology is these days, we have our computers, our phones, TV, that is such a distraction. And I try to be very mindful and very present with my kids so that when I am with them, it's all about them. So that when I have to leave, hopefully they have felt that love and that presence when I'm in there and I'm not halfway distracted. I'm all in whatever it is that I am doing. That's awesome. I know your people listening are probably asking the same question or thinking about the same question than I am. Your husband's a stuntman and works in Hollywood. Are you allowed to talk about that, or is that not? What does he do? Is he in movies that we would know? And kind of what does that role look like?
Oh man, my husband is just phenomenal because we've never had a conventional 9 to 5, either of us. So we don't even know what that looks like. So for me to be able to do this and him, our children are very resilient and they think it's so fun and awesome. And he's done, it's been his, his only career for his whole adult life. So yeah, his name is Dexter Bell, and he is just a phenomenal stuntman and a very talented actor, and just does so, and is so present with our kids at the same time. And he has fight choreography with my 4-year-old son, and he showed up at their school and did a whole, it was bring your parent to work day, or tell the kids at school what your parents do. So they had a principal, an accountant, and then they had a stuntman. And so I felt bad for anyone who followed that, because my husband jumped off the stage and was doing flips and did fight choreography with my son. And it was just pure entertainment. It's pure entertainment in our house all the time. That's for sure.
It sounds like it. Now, you were telling me in the pre-interview that sort of you and I did to get to know each other a little bit, the story of how you met your husband. Please share that, because I thought it was such a great story.
Oh my gosh. God was all over that situation. He knew exactly what I needed. And especially when you look down the road, it's hard to see that. I was 19 years old and I was still a sophomore in college, and I went to Vancouver for just overnight with some girlfriends who lived toward that area in Seattle, Washington. And I was walking into like a lounge restaurant, and Dex, my husband, was walking in, and his friend drug him out that night because his mom just had a stroke and he was feeling down that, his mom's going through a really tough time. He's like, you know what, you just got to get out of the house. I'm going to take you out. And I was dragging behind my friends, and they were already outside waiting for me. And if it was 10 seconds earlier or later, because we met and literally bumped into him at the entrance of the door, I would have never met him. And I bumped into him and made a funny joke, and we had about a 10-second conversation. And then that was it. You never know who you're going to meet. My girlfriend snatched his phone out of his hand and said, look, her name's Kristen. If you ever want to talk to her, call her. We got a cab to catch. We got to go. And, from there on out, I back then when we didn't have FaceTime and Facebook to be able to forward any articles, I forwarded an email that was an inspirational email about Christ and just, being hopeful when you're going through hard times. And he was on my email list, and he's, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but this is Dexter. And I really needed to hear that right now because my mom just had a stroke and she's not going to make it. And I thought to myself, maybe I should just call him and see if he's okay. So I called him, and being a broke college student, I called a Canadian phone number and talked to him for 4 hours. And my phone bill, I think, was $500. And I was like, how am I ever going to pay for this? And it was the best conversation I've ever had. And I was immediately enamored by the type of character that he had. And the rest is history. We've been together for 16 years and married for almost 9 and 2 kids later. And he couldn't be, a better man to lead our family.
It's a great story, and probably the best $500 you ever spent, right?
Best $500. That is for sure. You know what? He needs to pay me back for that.
Absolutely. Come on now. Go find that receipt and submit it.
Exactly. I'm going to invoice him.
Exactly. Kristen, let's learn your faith journey. You've talked a lot about God, but where does that journey for you begin, that walk with Christ and kind of taking shape? Where does that start for you?
Yeah, it started when I was in high school. I never had much of an upbringing to learn about Jesus before I got to high school. And, they say God puts people in your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And this boy that I was dating in high school, his family was very, very strong Christians. And I ended up getting baptized when I was 16 with him, and with his family present. And, I'm always grateful for him and his family for what they did. And from there, it really helped kind of shape who I was going to put myself around when I got to college, and being independent, being able to make all your own choices without anyone telling you what to do. I'm just so thankful that God put that person in my life at that time before I went off to college to be able to guide me and lead me in the right direction, because there was a lot of people that I would see that didn't necessarily have that same outcome. And from there, I felt really blessed that 3 years later, God placed Dexter in my life because he's older than I am. He was more established, and he's been through so much and such a testimony of what God has done in his life, and has really been an amazing, leader in our family for Christ, and being able to show our kids what Christian parents looks like. And I think it's been a huge blessing. And so from high school on, we've been really consistent with just being involved and surrounding ourselves with people that are going to help build up our Christian faith. And it's a struggle because we lived in Hollywood for 9 years, and it's hard to find a path that people really follow in Christ consistently in a place that is so empty and so broken. Yeah. And we always say, for my husband, he's like, I don't want to be of the industry. I just want to dabble in it and then know what my principles and my character is. And, some people get so caught up in it, but if that means that you're never exactly where you want to be, but we know that we're walking in Christ, I am fine with not being able to succeed in the fame that I define for myself. That's not what it's about. It's the faith that we can have for Christ. So it's definitely helped us to define who we surround ourselves with, what's really important, and raising our kids that way as well.
So what was some intentional rhythms that you guys put into place to stay connected to God in Hollywood? I know you're not there now, you're in Atlanta, but when you were there, I've talked to some people who live in Los Angeles, and there's been a couple churches that they've gone to or places, and certainly finding the right people, but it can be difficult in a very dark place, in a very broken place. So what were some rhythms and some things that you set into place to keep your relationship with the Lord strong, I guess?
Yeah, I think we found just one of the most amazing churches out there, and it definitely set the precedence for what we really want out of a church. So that's really, really powerful. The hard part about Los Angeles is because everyone's so spread out, it's hard to have a community of Christian people, even from our church, because it wasn't close to where we lived. So, trying to be as involved as we could, whether it's ushering at church or getting involved in a small group and going consistently to be able to build that community there was a huge part. But the other part is just praying together, being the light of Christ, no matter where we are, and attracting those people to us. And it was really important to me in a place that I feel is so empty and doesn't have God to be different, to be the light of Christ, so that people are like, wow, there's just something so different about you, hoping that they would see Jesus in us, and not just what we are from the outside.
What does that faith look like, or what has it looked like bringing it into the workplace? So you're a referee, and when you go and referee a game, you're still a Christian first, right? And obviously it's weird. You can't really bring that into the role that you do, but it still is a part of you wherever you go. So what does that look like, being a Christian in a place like college basketball as a referee?
Yeah, that's such an awesome question. And I would say my walk is different and my mentality is different. I feel like coming down here, I feel like my faith has gotten even stronger just being in a place where it's much more God-centered in the South. And it's been really, really great. It's been really great for me in transition to refereeing, because this is the first time in my life where I've had other partners want to pray before the game. Yeah. And I'm like, this is the best. But for my routine, I do the same thing every time. And I try to be disciplined with all the little details. And some of the details that are really important to me is before I even get out of my car, I pray for discernment and for God to give me the right words to be able to speak to the coaches in a way that they will see a sort of peace and a person that wants to talk to them and is not defiant. I pray for all of the players and the coaches and the safety of them during every Star Spangled Banner. I try to carry myself in a way to be approachable and not be someone that would be negative toward them, so that they can feel like, wow, she's approachable, she's kind, I can communicate with her, I like her, there's something different about her. So I try to be consistent no matter where I go, so that I begin to build a reputation among so many of these people that don't know me.
You probably hear a lot of different types of responses from coaches, I have to imagine, during a game.
Yeah,
how do
definitely.
you not let that get to you when a coach might get out of hand with their words or with their actions? Or sometimes maybe you have let it get to you because you're just human.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, it absolutely can get to you and get you very flustered. And we're trained to have different techniques to try to bounce back very quickly, because if you have a play that you completely mess up and the coach is losing their mind over, sometimes you're like, I don't blame them because that was really bad. But I just had a really bad call. But if you're not bouncing back very quickly, then you're going to mess up the next call. So we try to think of something immediately to be able to bounce back. But also when a coach is very frustrated or yelling, I know for one, I have to remember this is their paycheck. Their job is on the line. This game is very important for them. So I understand their frustration. They're seeing it from such a biased point of view because they're only looking at what their players are doing. Yeah. And for the referees, we don't care who wins. We just want to keep our job. We just want to do a good job and get in and get out and make sure that we serve the game. So I know. And lastly, it's not about me, and I try not to take it personal. And I understand they're going to be frustrated, but I have a job to do and they have a job to do. And a lot of times their job may be yelling at me, but after the game is over, usually they shake our hand. It's a good game, but we try to keep the sportsmanship as fair as possible. But sometimes it definitely gets out of hand and you have to deal with it. And I have a line, and if they cross the line, then they'll either get a technical or a warning or ejected. But there's certain things, everyone's different, and there's certain things that I don't allow them to do.
What's the most memorable game you've been a part of? Maybe not a call that you made, but just it's the game, right? This game is something that everybody will remember, or certainly you will remember, whether it was a buzzer beater or just, a big pressure moment. What is that game that comes to mind for you when you think back?
It's really funny that what comes to mind is oftentimes it's the things that you wish you would have done differently. When I think of things that are most memorable, a lot of times it's a technical that I wish I would have given or something that I wish I would have done better. And it's interesting how you don't think of some of the best memories. You think of some of the things that you wish you could have improved on. But there have been so many exciting games where it's double overtime, buzzer beaters. A lot of times the ones that are most memorable is when we work together so well as a crew on the floor. And no matter who won, we know that we let the players predict the outcome. Right. And we were the ones that when we were on the same page, we worked really hard and we were as consistent. Those are the ones that are most rewarding. I've had some amazing schools that I've been able to referee, like the women of Mississippi State or Penn State and Notre Dame. There's a lot of great schools, but it's interesting because there isn't one in particular that really stands out.
That's okay. That's certainly fine. I mean, you do a lot of games too. Let me ask you about your other job, because you're a college basketball referee, but you also have a role with Red Bull. Share what that entails and what your role is. Yeah.
So Red Bull it's just one of the most amazing companies to work for. So I'm one of 18 people on their high performance team, and their high performance team are the ones that serve the athletes, and the athletes are professional athletes. They're a full-time job. We have over 600 athletes worldwide, and they're all of the, crazy athletes that you see on TV that do the extreme sports, from BMX riders to cliff jumpers to the guys in the wingsuits. So all of these athletes funnel through our headquarters in Santa Monica, California, and I help them with their nutrition, with their supplements. We have a lot of athletes. They've added actually a couple sports to the Olympics coming up, and surfing is one of the sports that they've added, and rock climbing and breakdancing. And that's awesome. So we have athletes in all of those sports, and so we work together with them to, some athletes have to be at a certain weight to fit into their wingsuit. Some have to be able to maintain a certain lean body tissue so that they can, their weight is distributed evenly on their surfboard. So we make sure that we're helping them with their diet, their nutrition. They travel all over the world knowing where to eat, how to meal prep, what supplements to take, so that they can be able to be the best athlete that they can be. So it's the best job. I get to be around professional athletes. I take my son to headquarters, and all of these athletes get to, he gets to work out with all of them in our gym there, and he just soaks it up. And it's an awesome job.
Now, people can follow along on that role on Instagram, right? What is your Instagram?
Yeah, K-Bell Nutrition.
K-Bell Nutrition. That's definitely something people need to go check out.
Yeah.
Love it. Last couple questions here with you, Kristen. Thanks so much for your time. Let's go back to the spiritual side for a minute. Is there a verse or a topic or something that God's been laying on your heart lately that you've been praying about, that you've been maybe talking about in a small group, meditating on? What's something that comes to mind when I ask you kind of a spiritual verse or topic that's kind of been going through Kristen Bell's life right now?
I would say 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18 says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Yeah. And I would say when times get tough and I'm away from my family for a long time, I'm under really stressful situations with basketball or trying to balance work. These are all things that we have to give thanks for, because these are privileges, and it's an honor to be able to serve the game, to be able to serve these athletes, and all for, a higher purpose. So I would say that would be, I try to say that verse every day and choose joy in all circumstances, because how lucky and how privileged are we to have these type of opportunities presented to us, to be able to have a family that loves us, that's healthy. So I'm just trying to always give thanks in all circumstances, even when times get tough.
You know what I love about that verse too, because people will ask a lot of times, what's God's will for my life? Where does he want me to go? What's his plan? And you just read God's will for our lives. Yes. It says, this is God's will for you, to pray continually, to give thanks in all circumstances. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Does that verse speak to you in that way as well? Just knowing that, okay, whatever I'm doing, I'm in his will when I am kind of walking through these things that, are stated in 1 Thessalonians.
Definitely. Especially, I feel like it's human nature to want to not have struggle and not be challenged, but we should be praying for those times, because those are the times when you look back, it's like, that's when my character was built. That's when I was able to take that memory or that experience and be like, oh man, I dealt with that. I can easily deal with this that's approaching me, and this is what I have to overcome. So even when we're in the thick of it, and the one thing that comes to my mind, and I've talked about my girlfriends about this as well, my biggest fear is something happening to my children, and remembering that they're not my children, they're God's children, and God has a plan for them, and knowing that, continuing to pray over them, but at the same time, if something was to happen, praying that God is preparing us for those moments, and to embrace the struggle, knowing that will have an amazing testimony out of it, that we will have stronger character built out of it. And that's why I feel, with my jobs, it's not a 9-to-5, it's not normal circumstances, and it can be very trying and challenging. But when I look back, those are also some of the most rewarding times in my life as well.
Kristen Bell has been our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Last question, Kristen, and we ask this to all of our guests. What are you learning from God now? What is he teaching you today in the season of life that you're in? What are you learning from God?
That if I'm not becoming noticeably more like him, then I've totally missed God's purpose for my life. And it doesn't matter what I can accomplish. If I'm not doing it in his purpose, then I'm not really accomplishing anything at all.
That's really good stuff. Kristen Bell is our guest, has been our guest here on Sports Spectrum. If you're watching a college basketball game this year, take a watch at those referees. You do the job that you don't want to ever be seen or known for, because you want to just quietly do your job.
Yes.
And nobody recognizes you, and it's just a good game. But
exactly.
Keep an eye for Kristen Bell, and certainly give her a follow over on Instagram, K-Bell Nutrition. Thanks for being here. Your story's awesome, and just appreciate you. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Jason.
Many thanks to Kristen Bell, college basketball referee, Red Bull sports dietitian. Thanks to Kristen for being here on Sports Spectrum. I mentioned her Instagram page. Give her a follow there. K-Bell Nutrition is her name. You can look it up, Kristen Bell. Bell Nutrition, and she's a good follow there. Lots of fun and posting pictures of her family, and certainly some encouragement as a dietitian and as a referee as well. She's a great person, and she's got a great story, and I'm glad that she was willing to come on and share it here on Sports Spectrum. Many thanks to Kristen. Thanks to you as well for listening. We really do appreciate you checking out our podcast. It's been going on now for 2.5 years. As you can see, you're probably listening to this on your phone, and when you go back and look at it, you can see there's over 400 episodes of the Sports Spectrum podcast that you can go back and listen to. Tons of interviews, tons of great stories from people in the sports world, in the faith world, authors, speakers, pastors, and of course, athletes and coaches. So really, go check it out. Go back and listen to all of our content. We got many, many wonderful testimonies of what God is doing in people's lives here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Also want to direct you to our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can give us a follow there. Certainly add us, like us, whatever you want to do, retweet us. We'll see your posts. If you tag this podcast on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, we will retweet it and like it and comment and all that good stuff. So please reach us there. Social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube, and all of our podcasts are found there as well. And lastly, I mentioned it in the beginning, check out the website, sportspectrum.com. That's where all of our content can be found over at the website, sportspectrum.com. And you can subscribe to our quarterly magazine for just $18 for an entire year. SportsSpectrum.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day.